Alrighty guys, so we're back working on the Z50. Before I can get this rear end all tightened up and ready to go, this is the problem I'm dealing with. The brake pedal is actually like frozen solid. Originally I thought it was the back brakes, but once I got the brake rod off, they work just fine. Greased this up when I put the new wheel. It's a little bit unstuck now. You can kind of see it's come off the shaft there a little bit. Just been soaking it in PB Blaster repeatedly and hitting it with a little torch that I got. That way the metal expands just a little bit, and it also lets the PB Blaster just kind of get in there and break up the rust. Once it's heated up, can put a little more on there. That way penetrates a little better. And what I've been doing is putting a rod on here, grab onto this and the actual brake pedal, just kind of rock it back and forth. It's a little looser now, and pull towards you at the same time, and let's see if be able to get this off. Alright, we're getting pretty close. What I found the best luck with is actually just grabbing the bar that I have on there and just going back and forth at the same time, kind of pulling towards you, and slowly but surely she's coming off. So finally, after like 20 minutes of going back and forth, this is finally out. It's just full of rust and corrosion, including the shaft there. What I use is steel wool and just completely clean that off, both that and the actual brake pedal on the inside there. After a little work, this is what I ended up with. And basically just want to be smooth and not feel any roughness. Same thing with this guy here. What I ended up doing was just balled up a little bit of steel wool, kind of stuff it in there and twist. Just want to be able to put this on here and it move on its own. It's not supposed to stay, it's just supposed to be real loose even before you put any grease on there. I'll just put this back brake together and we can get back to finishing up the rear. Rear brakes are all together. That pivot point is nice and greased up, moves freely. My only problem now is that I think this spring was stretched out. I think somebody had the same thinking. Rear brakes were locked up when it was actually this pivot point that was rusted up. So now this brake lever doesn't return all the way. If you actually try to return it up all the way, the spring comes off. I ended up with pictures instead of video here, but I just took a torch and bent it a little tighter than it was before. I've got it up on a stand now. Since we're done with the brake side, we're gonna go ahead and take care of the drive. Since I did put some bigger wheels on it, what I'm gonna go ahead and do is actually change up the gear ratio. Sprocket from a 14 to a 12 tooth sprocket, as well as put on a new chain. Now that that cover's off, we can see the stator we installed in the last video, and we can get to the sprocket. All we've got to do is remove those two bolts, and then this little plate on the front rotates. Teeth on the plate go into that little groove on the output shaft, and it comes off, and then you can just slide the sprocket right off. Just wanted to show you guys a comparison. The 12 tooth sprocket is quite a bit smaller than the 14 tooth. So all this is going to do is, since this is a bigger tire, putting a smaller sprocket on the front gives it a deeper final drive. So basically this motor has to turn less in order to turn that wheel the same amount of times, essentially kind of giving you a mechanical advantage. So new front sprocket is on. Have the chain on there loosely. I bought something that was much bigger than what I needed, just because I have an extended swing arm and I'm not really sure how much chain I need. So I'm going to go ahead and just size it up and cut off the excess. I've got the chain cut to the right size. Front cover, stator cover is back on. Went ahead and just did a once over on everything on the back suspension, made sure everything was nice and tight. So move to the front. Gonna do the head bearings on this. Gotta just loosen these, remove the bars and this center nut so we can take off this upper triple clamp and slide the forks down and out of the frame. The front end is taken apart, so the next thing I gotta do is take out these races. So this is an old one here. This is actually gonna be narrower than the head tube. If you look closely, you can see that the race is actually narrower, so there's quite a bit of area for you to put some sort of rod or screwdriver on there to knock that out. So these are the old original bearings I pulled out. This is the inner race that's in the head tube, the top race, and this is the bearing. Doesn't take much force to bend them, which is why a lot of people upgrade them, go with something a bit stronger, and that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna use a small propane torch just to heat up the inner race here, and I just get it pretty warm. The idea is that this metal is gonna expand, and the inner races have been in the freezer, so they're gonna get smaller, contract, so they should slip in there pretty easy. You shouldn't have to hammer on them too hard to get them in. This is the kit that I chose to go with by All Balls Racing. It's the part number and the models it fits. It's a taper rollered bearing setup, so allows a lot less slop, side to side movement. It's a lot more stout for adult riders. These bearings are going to be different. The one marked 993516, see if I can get it to focus there, is going to have a smaller inner diameter compared to the 993517. The outer races are also engraved like that as well, so you can tell them apart. The one with the smaller diameter is going to go on the top. I'm going to go ahead and pack these full of grease in between all the little rollers there. Just grab a bunch of grease and mush it in between there so I can put this together. I did not realize that I wasn't filming, and I put it all back together. But it's essentially the same procedure that you do taking it apart. So it's a washer. I have a different one here since I have aftermarket forks. Washer, one of the seals, bearing, race, bearing, and then another one of the seals just like the came in the kit. There was two of them. I chose to keep this top dust cover. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten everything back up and we should have a roller. The Z50 is finally back together. Finished butting up the front end. Put a brake lever and a temporary kill switch on it. Gas tank and seat. Got the sprocket. 14 tooth sprocket is actually not gonna work because of the position of the sprocket and this swing arm. The teeth don't like to mesh well with the chain. It's the same exact size sprocket and everything, but for some reason doesn't like to work. So I went back to the 14 tooth. Might end up just trying out a 13 tooth and see if I have a little bit better luck. I actually ended up trashing that spring as well that I thought I fixed. I got this from my parts bin. It's a brake shoe spring from a XR70. Has enough resistance and works pretty good. And there's a couple things that I want to go ahead and change. First one's probably going to be to add a bigger riser there. The handlebars are like right at my knees, so it makes it really difficult to steer. I want to try to actually space the pegs down a bit, as well as maybe trying to make some wider pegs. Extended brake lever and shift lever. The kickstand, it's way too short. I've been having to use a 4x4 block. Little things that need to be bigger because everything is bigger on the bike now. I was also thinking of maybe on this grab handle here, making sort of a box, still leaving enough room for a handle, something shallow, just enough to house like a regulator, rectifier, small battery maybe for lights.